We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello and welcome to I Be Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I speak from the role of a patient, and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm Michelle Harvey. I'm your other host. I am Mason's mom, and I speak from the role of a caregiver. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about mainly from Mason's perspective, but I'm going to jump in from the caregiver perspective, from a parent perspective. But it's how he felt about his Crohn's disease diagnosis at first, and how he feels about it because it's been almost 4 years since he was diagnosed. We're almost there. We're about a month away from that diagnosis. So he's going to talk about how it feels now versus how it was when
How it felt.
yeah, and the idea of this is not to compare, is not to say you should be where Mason is at. I think it's just a good idea to talk about how
I feel now.
right, like there is hope
Yeah.
and just your outlook overall because it's a
Silver
lot.
lining.
Yeah, it's a lot when you're first diagnosed and it's a lot for a parent to accept.
Hard to pay attention to one thing.
So it's kind of like, all right, so 4 years later, when he was diagnosed, I couldn't have pictured where we would be at. I had no idea what that looked like. So I think it's kind of neat to talk about and just don't compare yourself if you're listening. And, we don't want anyone to feel bad or feel like, anything like that because everyone's on an individual journey too. And you should be proud no matter where you're at in it. And this isn't to hurt anybody's feelings. So we're gonna talk about when he was first diagnosed briefly and how he felt. We've gone over your story, but I think it's like what were your feelings in that? So I mean, you were basically told there was one you wanted to include the heart condition too, right? Yeah. So he was initially when he was diagnosed, it was with Crohn's disease.
Yeah. And that was crazy because we never heard of Crohn's disease before. We've heard about other things, but you hear about Crohn's disease and you've never heard about it before, and you're like, well, what is that? I've never heard of it before. Is this really rare? Is it like, we know a lot about it, but it was very stressful because what's this disease? What does it do? You don't know anything about it. You're afraid what it can do, what it can cause.
One of my first questions was, so can we cure this? What does this look like? And they were like, no, there's no cure. And I think that was really difficult to accept. And at the same time, he was diagnosed with a dilated aortic.
Yeah, and what that is if I stress too much, which
well, this is what they told him, right?
Yeah, this is what they told me, which is very
the description.
funny.
Yes.
They say if you work out too much, if you exercise or run around too much,
get
or
nervous,
play any sports, get nervous, stress over something, your heart will basically explode.
Right.
And they say don't stress over that. Don't stress over that. Your heart will explode if you stress. And I'm like,
yeah,
what?
that was like, I mean, and that's when you're being told you have an incurable disease and they're telling you, oh, don't stress. And
don't stress.
Yeah. And so it's like, whoa, okay, how do I do all these things? And that
I'm not supposed to stress about my heart exploding. I should not be stressed about that.
Yeah, no. So we had that diagnosis too. And that diagnosis stayed with him for 5 months.
Yeah.
And then diagnosis was incorrect.
Yeah, I went to the cardiologist
who specialized in that particular.
He listened to it for like he listened to it and he was like, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and they did a whole
there was obviously more, but he listened to it and he was like, no, there's nothing there.
Yeah. So I mean, he was like, you're good.
And that was crazy.
Yeah.
So I invited him to lunch, of course.
Yeah. It's like, I'd like to take you to lunch.
Like, thank you for getting
rid of this. Thank you for being one of the good guys. You gave me some good news today. And that was like initially, you have that initial shock. And I think everybody's been diagnosed with Crohn's disease knows that feeling of you first hope that there's a cure. You find out there's not. And in Mason's case, he was severe. This wasn't something that diet was just going to handle, but they did throw everything at it. They
got rest, biologics, TPN.
Yeah, TPN, steroids,
steroids,
methotrexate. It was all at the same time. And so they were kind of throwing everything they could at it to see if they could get it to slow down and get him to feel better. And I think at the time, you hear about too, like the treatments that it's going to be for the rest of your life. And that feels really like decisive. Like you're making these decisions that are going to last.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean I'm going to be on this for the rest of my life,
We mentioned this before in another podcast that, like, with cancer, when you go into remission, you are done with the treatments. You come off the infusions, you come off everything. So we had thought, they're like we get him to remission, and it's like, oh, okay, and then can we get off of these biologics? And
The nurses told me when I was around first diagnosed or something.
mhm,
When I was first diagnosed, obviously I probably didn't understand this as much. My doctor told me that there is no cure for it, or you always have to stay on biologics. You can't come off of them. Because one of
mhm,
the nurses, I was asking them about like, so what is this disease? How do we treat it?
mhm.
And the nurse said, well, once you're in remission, once your symptoms don't exist, I guess,
Yeah,
are not
you're just
symptomatic,
asymptomatic,
yeah,
right?
you
Right.
are in remission. And I was like, "Oh, in remission." So I just thought of remission as no biologics, and that's great,
Right.
no biologics. But
Yeah.
remission is not no biologics.
Because you have to remember, biologics are not curing this
No, they're not.
disease. They are treating it.
They're treating the
And I
symptoms.
think a lot of people, I mean, this is very common in the Crohn's community to ask this question. I'm doing great. Can I stop taking this medication?
No, you can't.
And I think it's just really important to remember that you are doing great because of the medication.
Mhm.
It's not because the disease is just suddenly changed course. It's a
Yeah.
progressive disease. It gets worse. But when you're first diagnosed, you're thinking all these things are running through your head, and it's like, you're looking up the dangers of all of this stuff, and you're thinking for the rest of your life. And but
Yeah,
for right
hopefully.
now, it is still for life.
Curable, yeah.
Yeah. And so you're dealing with all those emotions, and then you're not feeling well. I mean,
No.
like, you had all this pain
Yeah.
and all these different procedures.
MRIs, like MREs, not
Yeah,
MRIs.
MRE,
Yeah.
an
Oh, yeah,
MRE,
no worries.
yeah, CAT scans
I did
and
get CAT scan, yeah.
colonoscopy, endoscopy,
Yeah, those are really fun.
all that
Yeah.
stuff, and you're getting blood tests
Mhm.
constantly, and
Wake
then
up in the middle of the night every, like, 2 hours so they can take
yeah.
your blood.
Yeah, and then you are, running to the bathroom. It's a lot, and I feel like also it's like you have a loss of privacy
Mhm.
because all of a sudden you go from being this regular kid who, like, you can go to the bathroom and
Yeah.
nobody's following you around and asking all these questions. And even with all the doctors, everybody coming in the room, it's just for you, I think and I think for a lot of people diagnosed, you lose that privacy. Like,
Mhm.
you are all of a sudden like a science project.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot. Everyone's asking you questions and
Mhm.
how are you feeling? They're bringing in psychiatrists, and it's like everybody's they're trying to do the right
Yeah,
thing, but from a patient perspective and a
where you go
caregiving
from
one,
being living normally, there is no normal, but you go
mm,
to living in a hospital where, like she said, you're not free,
no,
kinda, and there's always people asking you questions.
no.
It does feel like a science experiment.
We have to stick
Yeah.
this out. We have to do what we need to do to get you better. Once you go home, it it still kind of continues because you come home, but everything is different.
Mhm.
And
Home isn't like home anymore.
no, it's like a new life started.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of people, I think a lot of kids especially, it changes your childhood. It changes a lot of things. And it's hard for people to understand unless they've been there. And I can't fully relate on the level of being a patient, but I can relate from being a parent and just how my life changed. And it's easy to see how Mason would feel certain
Mhm.
ways. I could definitely understand his frustrations. And and also you're like being told, like, okay, you have to eat so much food, you have to eat this, you have to drink this. It's like so much telling you guys what to
Yeah.
do, and you just want to go back to how it was. And you feel terrible at the same
Yeah.
time. So I think when parents are questioning, like, some parents are like, what can we do? What can a parent do? I don't know. What could you recommend?
Just, like, always be there. I like telling them you'll be okay. Depending on the time, it will help or it won't. But just always being there, asking them questions, how they feel. Because when you ask questions, it makes them feel like you actually care and you're not just telling them things.
Mhm. Like,
Um,
not telling you how you
yeah,
feel, right?
yeah,
Like, you should have more energy, or you just
yeah.
need to do this. It's like, I don't think a
If
caregiver should ever assume how
yeah,
you should feel. Exactly. And I think parents need to have just keep an eye out. Like, therapy is a great idea, and you may need help yourself because it's all new for a parent too. You're not used to this,
no,
and to see your child hurt and sad, and your child looking at you and you can't help them
mhm, it's
because you
sad.
can't take it away. It's tough. So I think it's just best to, like with Mason, we validated his feelings all the time.
Mhm.
Listen to him.
Don't put them off.
Yeah, no, you have to like, really listen and and care and have empathy and understanding and, just listen to the doctors, get advice, and, as you slowly move along you come
You
home,
come home, yeah.
all of a sudden now, in addition to this new diagnosis and trying to take this all in.
Yeah, it's not like you go home and you're like, "Well, no, I don't have to go to the hospital again."
Right, it's like, no,
No.
you may end up back in the
Yeah,
hospital, and, and
and then you have appointments.
you have all these appointments
For
that
me now, it's just like we go to the hospital 2 times a
at
month,
least 2 times a
at
month.
least,
Yeah.
which may seem like a lot, but when we came out of the hospital, we were going to the hospital
It
almost
felt like once or twice a week,
yeah, once or
depending
twice a
who we
week.
are seeing. For parents who are trying to get back to work, it's tough because you're trying to go to all these appointments
It's
and
very
schedule them
overwhelming.
and deal with insurance and,
Then you have to follow a diet
mhm,
because if you eat something that isn't great, it
yeah,
could throw you into a flare. Like
thing.
for me, I had to do biologics and try to do change my diet so we could at least just try to get it back on track.
Right, let's
And then I was on steroids too.
yeah, and we're trying to figure out if there's any food triggers. So
Yeah.
we're trying to go through
You have to do it
all of that
slowly. You have to do it
and
slowly.
yeah.
It's not like, okay, you're having a burrito today. Okay, you're having
Right, it's like you
chicken
start
today.
adding
Yeah.
everything back in and see how they do,
Okay,
and
like
see if
start with
there's
rice, have that a few days. Next, you can add chicken, have
mhm,
that for a few days. You can't just add everything at once.
yeah, so you gotta monitor all that. So that's the other crazy thing is you're writing down
You have to write this all
everything they're
down,
eating, everything they're drinking, everything that's
which is overwhelming.
coming out, and you're recording all that, and then there's therapy, you have to, get set up with therapy and have that, and then there's scheduling still for procedures, for labs, infusions, injections, and at the same time, you're trying to do school.
Yeah, trying to do school.
Right, like, I think mentally, I think a lot of kids, it's just a lot. A lot of kids are just stressed out about school. I mean, a lot of kids just have normal stresses
But
like,
because
okay,
now you're going to the hospital all these times, now school's building up
mhm,
and you
so you're
have to
like, "Ugh."
catch up on Saturdays and
And even
Sundays.
besides that, like, you might not be feeling well.
Mhm,
It
yeah,
might
you might
be
be yeah.
you might not because you didn't sleep. Like, when
Yeah, it
we were
was
home from the hospital for, like, the first after you're diagnosed, I'd say for about a year and a half, you were
mhm,
up all
all
night.
night, yeah.
And so it was like you're tired during the day, and then you have to function, and you're expected to perform like a normal child would, and, normal, whatever that might
Yes,
be.
whatever your normal
Yeah,
is.
and so and it's like you can get a 504 plan, you can do those things, we homeschooled, so we didn't need that, but Mason didn't wanna fall behind, like,
No.
you still wanna have, like, the same academic teachings that other kids get, you
Yeah,
don't wanna have less of an education. So, there's all that. So, and then there's sports, and
yeah,
for Mason, it's basically golf,
yeah,
you
golf.
couldn't even swing the club because of the pain in your
So
back.
because of joint pain, you can't run. It may hurt to walk depending on how bad the joint pain is.
Mhm.
Golfing is really hard because you have to swing that club really fast,
Yeah,
and you have to hold it like this for the wind up, and so you
yeah.
can't do sports anymore.
So for some kids out there who are doing sports, it's frustrating too because you have to give up the things that were part of your life before the diagnosis. And the good news is, I think 4 years later, because that's kind of where we were at 4 years ago. That was the transition. But 4 years later, how do you feel now? I mean, not just physically, mentally. Like, how do you feel?
Definitely better physically, definitely feel better physically. Mentally, I do feel better too because I can understand the disease more. It's
Yeah,
not all coming at me at once. I've learned about it. I know about it. So
very
it's
true.
and you know what it can cause. So it's not like can it kill me? Can it all this stuff?
All those
It's yeah.
questions.
Obviously, it can be scary not knowing if you're gonna go into a flare or not because it can come out of nowhere. But I definitely feel much better about the diagnosis.
And I think since you flared like maybe 4 or 5 times since your
Yeah.
diagnosis. There's the unexpected when it happens, and it's frustrating, but you also
Mhm.
kinda know the protocol.
Yeah.
You know what happens
It's
now.
not like
You
when
know what to expect, I
yeah.
guess.
'Cause when you first get to the hospital and you go into a flare, you're like, "Okay, well, this is the first time after the hospital." You don't really know what to do. But as you go through more and more, which hopefully you don't have to go through that many,
Yeah,
but if you do, you learn what to do for your flare because it's different for everyone. So if you know what helps your flare, you can just keep doing that. You learn the little routine behavior on how to get out of
right.
the flare.
And so, like, you're gonna have those ups and downs, and I think that's just part of it. And I mean, you do a really good job now. I think with it, it's hard for me sometimes. I get frustrated for you when you start to flare. It's like, oh man, I feel so bad because I don't want you to have to go through that. But
Mm.
I think that the more we've done this, because we've had the amount of time really helps. It really does. I think you just get, slowly
Adapt,
you adapt, and
adapt to change.
now it's kind of our normal now.
Mhm.
And I mean, it isn't normal and it isn't easy.
No,
But
no,
it's
it's
our normal that
yeah,
we have,
that
and
we are
so
used to.
going to all those appointments isn't fun, but at the same time, he feels better. So,
Mhm.
I think that really helps too is finding a treatment that works for you because, like, when you were on
Yeah, when I was on
Remicade
Remicade, I
and
was like, it wasn't helping.
so you were
So I was like,
frustrated.
why am I going to the hospital, getting this IV in my arm, sitting there for 4 hours, and it's not helping, you know? And I'm like,
Right,
I don't like that I have to do that for nothing.
right,
And so, but once you find the correct biologic, you're like, okay, well, it's starting to make sense why I have to get this
right.
because it's actually helping me. And once you learn how it feels when it starts to help, it's worth it.
Which I think is a really important mindset for you guys out there listening. There is treatments out there, they may not work, but just, keep trying because if you do find the one that does, or the two in our case, it
Mhm.
was he would not have found a
No,
biologic that would have worked.
there
And
isn't a
so,
biologic that works for me
right. So
because 2 work.
2 worked, he needed that balance, and I think that's what
Mhm.
I see this all the time where people are like, I've tried every single biologic." It's like, "Have you tried them together, though?" Because one might not have worked, but maybe if you'd paired something with it, it would have.
So, and the first thing Stellara did was, even though it took really long for it to do anything with,
Substantial for the IBD
substantial for
symptoms, I
IBD,
guess, yeah.
immediately it took away joint pain, which was amazing because
Yeah.
I can run, like I can play
Sometimes you couldn't
sports.
even really
Yeah,
walk.
I can walk. There'd be days I was terrified to sneeze because if I sneezed, my back would go out and I
Yeah.
couldn't walk. I couldn't move that easily. And it was really scary knowing if you just achoo,
Yeah.
you can't move.
I felt bad for you because, I mean, I was even afraid, like, driving, I'm like, "Okay,
Mhm.
no
Yeah,
speed
if you
bumps."
go over speed bump too
I
fast, that
still
will
hate
hurt
speed
too.
bumps. Like, even if you went like, you go as carefully as you go over it,
Mhm. It will still hurt.
potholes,
Yeah.
anything. It was like, or I knew there were certain areas of roads that were more rough, and I'm like, let's not go that way because, little things like that. But once you find that treatment that really helps, it does make a
You're like,
difference.
yes.
Yeah, so that's part of it too, is continue to work at that and make sure you have a GI that is fighting hard
Mhm.
to get you those answers and not just say, "Oh, you failed this. Let's go to this. Oh, you failed this. Let's go." Have someone needs to think outside of the
Mhm.
box because you guys are all very different. So,
Yes,
anyway,
Crohn's
that's
is
a whole nother topic. But something that has helped us. So
yes.
anyways, and so having a good mindset that life, it's not going to be the same. You can't compare your new life to your old life because it's different.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, we can say we miss things
Yeah.
all the time, like, oh man, but that's doesn't matter because this is our life. And it's so important to start looking for the joy in this life because you can't live in the past and you have to move forward with the disease and look for the silver linings. But I mean, I think some of you listening right now are hating me for saying that right now because you're so miserable. But I mean, you say it a lot in
Yes.
your speeches.
Rolf Benershka, a really good speaker, he says that his diagnosis was a gift. He has ulcerative colitis, not Crohn's.
Yeah.
But it sounds like I'm copying him, and I am using the same words, but I would not change my diagnosis. If there was a cure, I'd take the cure, but I would
Yes.
not change my diagnosis because first, you're in pain, you're having all these issues, you just I don't wanna have this, and it's really stressful. But then if it wasn't for Crohn's disease, if it wasn't for me getting Crohn's disease, I wouldn't have met Rolf, we wouldn't be doing this podcast, we wouldn't have raised money for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation to find a cure.
Yeah, it's helped
All these things
others.
wouldn't have happened, and so it's
All the
yeah,
people
all the
you've
people we've
met
met along the
is
way, if we just
yeah.
changed if I was like, "I don't want this diagnosis," I got that wish, and the diagnosis didn't exist, it went back to the very beginning, all those people I would have known are gone from our
Yes.
lives, and that so I'm it's hard to say because, when if someone told me that when I was first diagnosed, I'd be like, "You're crazy."
I
Yeah, right. I'm never gonna say this is a gift,
I hear
but
that.
I'm saying it now. I'm saying
Yeah.
it's a gift.
And I think and we do say that with the knowledge that we know we can't change
Mhm.
it. So,
Yeah.
no, that's not gonna happen. So you
No.
can look at it, you can turn that around and
Think about the
say,
things that the think about the good things that have
right.
happened to you because of
And
this
if it's
disease.
not happening,
Been
do what you can to be proactive in making your life enjoyable. And I don't think that's going to be easy for a lot of you.
no.
I'm not saying that's easy to do, and it can be any way. You have to find your own key. I
Mm.
don't know what to tell. I can't tell everybody what the key is to unlock that feeling of empowerment with it. Like we know with Mason now, we've been able to figure that out. And that was writing a book, that
Mhm.
was giving speeches, going to bioscience companies.
But it's different for everyone, so I might
And
be like,
yeah,
"Oh, you know what? You should go write a book.
right.
Do whatever you enjoy
And
and what
sometimes
makes you
it's
feel
something
happy."
small. Maybe it's
Mhm.
giving back. Maybe it's
Yeah.
volunteering. Maybe it's just doing a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Do a research to Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Send them something that would make you feel like you're doing something and helping others. It's because it's not just about like Mason. It's not
No.
just about caregivers. It's about all of us. There's a big picture and there's all of these people that can use this help. And so being a part of that, so
Research.
like that
Yeah.
research, the solution to the problem is so important, or encourage others to help you out. But however it works for you, it's just important to find a way to feel empowered, I
Mhm.
think, because you really, this disease takes so much from you. Don't let it keep taking.
No.
And, find a way to get control of it. So that's my perspective
Yeah.
from a caregiver. That's like, I'm not saying that's how, the patient has to feel.
No.
That's
Yeah.
just how I viewed it, like how I could give Mason the tools he needed to better himself and then let him figure it out.
To
Like,
fight against the disease.
yeah, and that's what worked for us. So it's something that's got to work for you guys. And so you do have those silver linings. So you can look and you say, I know I can't get rid of this disease. I know that's not going to happen. So here are the good things that have
Mhm.
happened to me. And we have to focus on the people that do support us and that do support Mason. And I say us because caregivers need support too.
Mm.
Find people that support you, and that might not be in person. Maybe that's on a Crohn's group that's
Yeah.
online. There's going to be a community that accepts you and understands. So
Just because like, she doesn't have Crohn's, but I have Crohn's, and it affects everything we do. It affects
yeah,
everyone. I can't be like, "Okay, guys, I'm just gonna go drive down to the hospital and get my infusion."
right. It's
Can't do
like,
that.
no, someone has to set that up. Someone has
Mhm.
to take him.
Take time
And
out of their day to do that.
yeah, so we're part of it. We're part of the team. And so it does look different when you have a child with it. But I imagine if you have a spouse or a family member,
So be different.
it's going to look a little different for all of you.
Mm,
So it was awful when he was diagnosed, seemed like the worst thing ever. And it's 4 years later. I can't believe it's been 4 years.
mhm.
Just about 4 years. I,
Yeah.
I can't believe it because I couldn't see this. Like I
No.
didn't just, and now here
'Cause
we are. We've made it. We've like made it through this.
today, I
Yeah.
can start the day, end of the day is it goes by so fast, and then but when you're in the hospital, just hearing about this disease, the day goes by
So
so
slow.
there's
So if you're listening, guys, it is life changing, this diagnosis, and it is frustrating, but it'll be 4 years down the road, and you're going to be able to look back and see your growth. It's going to take a long time for you, some of you to feel like you can see that, and you're going to feel like I don't, I'm not going to get there, but you will, and you will see positive changes. You will see some kind of growth and all of this, and so just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and keep your head
yes.
up, and keep fighting. You guys are all warriors, and I'm so proud of Mason. I'm always in awe of all of you guys, and
Wait.
keep raising awareness so people know more about this disease and can help you guys in any way they can.
Yes. Fight
So,
Crohn's.
yeah, fight it and yeah, find a
Join
cure,
the fight.
guys.
Yes.
Find a cure.
It'll be
So,
amazing.
so that's about it for
Yeah.
today. Follow us on Instagram at Team IB Determined. Follow the Reggie Project and send in those pictures with
Yes,
the
take picture with your
download your own
favorite cheese
Reggie.
pizza.
Yes, and take a picture, send it in. We would love to see that and
Imagine
share it.
imagine Reggie, in front of, the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. We really would like to see that, guys.
No
It's not gonna be
photoshopping.
us because we aren't traveling like
Yeah.
that, but if, during the summer, I think we should challenge people,
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah, do little trips, go somewhere with
yeah,
Reggie.
like, some really cool places. Can
Guys,
somebody
no
do that? Like,
guys, no photoshopping.
yeah, I mean, let's do that. So I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And you guys are probably either listening or watching us. If you're
Mhm.
listening, you can listen on any podcast station like iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also on YouTube
YouTube?
now.
Yeah,
They have
there's
a
YouTube
podcast,
podcasts.
which we're on there
But if you did wanna watch this, just go to our YouTube,
at IB
channel,
Determined.
IB Determined,
Mhm.
and if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you wanna be notified every time we post a video, make sure to hit that bell icon.
And comment too to let us
Yes.
know if there's anything we can talk about. If your views, share with us. This is a community we're trying to create, and we really want to open it up to you guys and make you feel welcomed and make you feel heard. So please comment, say
Yes.
hi, let us know where you're watching
Give us
from,
ideas on
and
maybe other episodes you wanna
yeah,
see, anything we left out.
because otherwise we will just keep talking about what
Mhm.
we want to talk about, and so
Yeah.
we'd
Just
love
give
to
us
hear.
ideas maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe
So
just say hi,
mhm,
tell us what brought you to this podcast, what you can relate with maybe, things like that. Just
yeah.
fun little ideas.
So with that, everybody have a great weekend because we're on a
Yes, great
weekend filming
weekend.
this, but or weekday,
Yay.
work day, like we
Yep.
always say, school day. It's almost for us, it's almost summer break here, but depending when you're listening, who knows? So just have a
Have a
great
great,
week,
great
day,
weekday, month,
whatever.
break. I don't know.
Make it a good
Just
one,
have making it
whatever
good.
it is. And
Yes.
we will see you guys
In the
the
next
next
episode.
episode.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.